Reading from John's Gospel, chapter 11. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Martha was the one who anointed the Lord with perfume and wiped his feet with her hair. Her brother, Lazarus, was ill. So the sisters sent a message to Jesus, "Lord, he whom you love is ill." But when Jesus heard it, he said, "This illness does not lead to death. Rather, it is for God's glory, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it." Accordingly, though Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus, after having heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was.
Then, after this, Jesus said to the disciples, "Let us go to Judea again." The disciples said to him, "Rabbi, the Jews were just now trying to stone you, and are you going there again?" Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Those who walk during the day do not stumble, because they see the light of this world. Those who walk at night stumble, because the light is not in them." After saying this, he told them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to awaken him." The disciples said to him, "Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will be all right." Jesus, however, was speaking about his death, but they thought that he was referring merely to sleep. Then Jesus told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead. For your sake I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him." Thomas, who was called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, "Let us also go, that we may die with him."
When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had been in the tomb for 4 days. Now, Bethany was near Jerusalem, some 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them about their brother. When Martha heard Jesus was coming, she went and met him, while Mary stayed at home. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know God will give you whatever you ask of God." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." And Martha said to him, I know he will rise again on the resurrection on the last day." And Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" And she said to him, "Yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world."
But when she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary and told her privately, "The teacher is here and is calling for you." And when she heard it, she got up quickly and went to it. Now, Jesus had not yet come to the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. The Jews who were with her in the house consoling her saw Mary get up quickly and go out. They followed her because they thought she was going to the tomb to weep there. When Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet, and she said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Lord, come and see. Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said how he loved him. Some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?
Then Jesus, again, greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, take away the stone. Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, Lord, already there's a stench because he's been dead 4 days. And Jesus said to her, did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? So they took away the stone, and Jesus looked upwards and said, Almighty God, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me. And when he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, unbind him and let him go.
Many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and had seen what Jesus did, believed in him.
So the scripture tells us that this certain man, Lazarus of Bethany, was gravely ill. Mary and Martha had sent word to Jesus, Lord, the one you love is sick. Did they want him to come? Or just merely speak some divine words wherever he was, so Lazarus would be healed? See, even though Jesus loved this family, he didn't run right over to Bethany. He stayed where he was 2 more days. And then finally told his disciples, let's go to Judea. What? Teacher, the Jews there have tried to stone you. And you want to go back? When they arrived, Lazarus had been in the tomb for 4 days. Let's just do some quick math. Lazarus had been buried 4 days before Jesus arrived. Jesus waited 2 days and then walked 2 days to Bethany. So it seems Lazarus was indeed already dead when Jesus finally received the message.
The disciples were irritated with Jesus. Jesus was off course again, they were thinking. Drawn by his love for this family, Jesus had waited 2 days on the other side of the Jordan River and then traveled 2 more days to Bethany to again be at risk of the authorities in Jerusalem, only about 2 miles away. They thought they were going over to Bethany so Jesus could show them something they'd already seen. That he could comfort the grieving and show compassion for the bereaved, the lost, and the lonely. And perhaps the disciples were showing signs of mission fatigue. They were unsure of the final mission. They were confused by these strategies which Jesus kept choosing. Though only Simon may have actually been a zealot, which would have been a nationalist patriot of Roman ancestry, a fierce agitator wanting to see action, probably many of the 12 were also zealous for the time to come when Jesus would reveal his authority, defeat the Roman oppressors, and free the people who had lived under Caesar's yoke. So they weren't prepared for what would happen at the tomb in Bethany that day that began with the gray hues of a sunless morn, the dreary moans of mourners. What happened next? No one could have anticipated.
As soon as Martha learned that Jesus was near, she ran to meet him. "Lord," she cried, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Can you hear her anger and frustration? "Lord, why didn't you do this for me? Where were you when I needed you most? You can channel God's healing power over even the worst of illnesses. So why didn't you take care of this problem when we first told you? It feels like you failed us." How often do we wonder why God doesn't do things the way we think God ought to do things? How often do we feel like our prayers just don't make any difference? How often do we want to even yell, "Why weren't you here, God, when we needed you? Where is your almighty power now? Why didn't you do something?" Martha was filled with strong emotion, yet she continued. "Yet I know even now God will give you whatever you ask." So we catch a glimpse of Martha's faith, her confidence in Jesus' character and power. She trusted Jesus, as well as God's willingness to work through him. God will give you whatever you ask. "Martha, your brother will rise again." "Oh, sure, I know he'll rise again in the resurrection in the last day." "Martha, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me will live, even though they die. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" "Yes, Lord. I believe you are the Christ, the Son of the living God, the one coming into the world." Another glimpse of Martha's faith and belief and mental acceptance of Jesus' identity as God's Son. So Jesus wanted to know where Lazarus' body was. So they took him to the tomb. A short distance from it, he told the crowd, "Take away the stone." And Martha protested. "By this time there'll be a bad odor. I mean, he's been there 4 days." The Hebrew culture believed a person's spirit hung around the tomb up to a maximum of 4 days, hoping to be reunited with the body. Yet, after that, the spirit just moved on into the heavenly realm. And in the first century Palestine, bodies were not preserved the way Egyptian bodies were, or as they are today. A body was usually buried the day of death because decay began immediately. So when Jesus told them to open the tomb, everybody was a bit queasy. "Oh, Lord, don't ask us to do that. We don't want to do that." I mean, we've all probably said something like that to Jesus. "Lord, we'll obey you, yet surely you don't really want us to do that. I mean, if you do, it will stink." See, Jesus ignored her and once again told the crowd to move the stone. And again, Martha protested. How is it, even when Jesus tells us what to do to solve our problems or take away our pain or improve our relationships, we often protest and we're just reluctant to do what he asks? How often we're afraid to listen to his request because, well, we're just not sure that we can do what God asks. Or we're just not sure that we want to do what God says do. And if we do want what he asked, we might have to deal with something that might sort of smell up the place. I mean, the truth is, problems stink. And we'd rather just, leave them buried. The thing is, to receive the miracle God had planned, Martha had to stop making excuses and risk smelling the corpse of her dead brother. And for our congregation to receive the miracles that God has planned, it may have to risk opening tombs where leaders have buried the problems so Jesus can get to them. Yet we may be afraid. I mean, it wasn't only Martha who was concerned. It was the entire group of mourners. The Greek Jesus instruction was in the plural form. All y'all, take that stone away. Something this big could not have been accomplished by one person. It was up to the entire community of faith to do it together. So Jesus was standing in front of the tomb and said, "Come on, people, roll that stone away. Give me access to that body. If you want to see the power and the glory of God, you've got to cooperate with me." You have to wonder if it was a standoff with Jesus saying, "Move the stone," and the people think, no way, it's going to stink. How often is it like that with us? We have a problem, and Jesus tells us to open it up and give God access to it, so God can take care of it, but we just don't want to. Let's just let sleeping dogs lie. Let's not open up that can of worms. The point is, we don't always want to give Jesus full access to our problems because, well, we're just afraid of what we might have to do. Some hope if we just ignore the problems, they'll go away. Yet keeping the tomb closed would have caused Lazarus' body to keep decaying. And keeping our problems buried won't make them any better, or it won't make them go away. If we keep our problems closed off from Jesus, then we can't experience new life. Only when we open up and expose our problems to Jesus can he produce incredible, amazing results. Didn't I tell you, if you believed, you would see the glory of God? Do we believe God wants us to see and experience the glory of God? Do we believe Christ can and will produce incredible results? Jesus waited 4 days to come because he wanted this group to see and experience the glory of God. What he was going to do could only be credited to God at that point. Everything in Martha's background and upbringing told her, keep that tomb closed. Yet Jesus offered her an incredible opportunity. Yet it was only when she was willing to be obedient that she would be able to see the glory of God. And it's the same with us. Only when we give God our total trust and obedience and do what God asks, will we be able to see and experience the glory of God. Now I know when we open up all those issues and concerns and fears or problems and we give Jesus access to them, it might not feel pleasant. In fact, it may stink. Yet if we don't give Jesus access to them, we won't be able to see and experience the glory of God. The command to move the stone, the obstacle that prevented Jesus access to the tomb, was addressed to the entire group. I mean, it would have taken everybody's help to do it. as a community of faith, how can we become more intentional about working together to move the stones and the obstacles that keep Jesus from working miracles in our lives and the life of our congregation? Oh, God wants us to work together, to roll the stones away, so we can experience God's glory. How? By being positive and uplifting and encouraging, by expressing hope and joy and excitement and enthusiasm, by openly sharing our faith, by offering our love and extending forgiveness and being accountable for our words and actions. By first deciding we won't hide our problems, we will agree and decide to openly discuss them and find mutual solutions that will benefit everyone. By giving God the opportunity to provide the win-win-win-win-win solution. You win, we win, God wins, God's kingdom wins.
Well, that's a powerful message. There's one other voice we haven't heard from yet. There's another character in this drama, another person at the tomb that we don't hear from, yet about whom we know at least 2 or 3 things. It's Lazarus. Think about it. The first thing we know is Lazarus died. Yeah, really. He honestly and truly died after being ill long enough so his sister Martha had summoned Jesus in a desperate plea for help. Yes, he died and he was entombed. This is not someone jokingly saying, hey, Lazarus, go in here and hide so you can surprise Jesus when he comes to visit you. Like some Jack in the Box, or maybe it would be a Laz in the tomb. No, he was dead and buried, and the tomb was sealed with a stone, a really big stone, one that Mary and Martha couldn't have moved by themselves. In fact, it may have taken the entire community to roll it in place. So we have proof Lazarus died. Then there's the second and only other thing we know from this story. After 4 days, Jesus came to the tomb, commanded the stone to be rolled away, which took the entire community, although all anybody expected after 4 days was a stench and disappointment. And yet Jesus called out to Lazarus, Lazarus, come out. And then, wait for it, yes, amid the anticipated fear and the probable stench and the gloom of the tomb, amid the loss of hope and the deep abiding grief and sadness, Lazarus came out of the tomb. Lazarus, who had lain there amid the cold stones and the hard, unyielding earth, whose body, bound in the grave wrappings, had already begun to sink into the earth as gravity drained his body of any vestige of life. Yes, Lazarus moved. Have you ever wondered what the first thoughts of a person being resurrected from death actually might have been? Who's calling you? Sounds like Jesus. How did he get in here? What does he want with me now? What am I supposed to do now? Come out? Still Lazarus moved. Summoned by the sweetest yet most commanding voice the world has ever known, Lazarus began to move. Struggling to break free from the wrappings, he stumbled into the daylight that he thought he would never see again. And he came out. Now the entire body of mourners, from Mary and Martha to Lazarus' friends and the townspeople, the bystanders, even Jesus' disciples, don't forget, they've been watching this whole time. They all stopped, dead still, to make a bad time. Transfixed by this incredible sign of God's presence and power and promise, yes, God can bring the dead back to life when God chooses. God can reveal God's power in show-stopping and mind-blowing and game-changing, life-altering ways. God does this through God's own human presence on earth. The Messiah, the Christ, the Anointed One, whom we know as Jesus. God, in the voice of Jesus, calls. A single human rises from the tomb of despair and loneliness and final ending and hopelessness and no more life ever. And comes out and lives again.
God, in the voice of Jesus, calls us as God's church. Broken, tired, hurting humans. God calls, rise from your tombs of discouragement, apathy, indifference, and longing.
God calls, come out, church. Rise from your fear of failure.
God calls, come out, church. Rise from your aversion to adventure, risk, and change.
God calls, come out, church. Rise and run toward the light of a new dawn, of a new day.
Of wishes and wonder.
Of hoping and healing.
Of presence and prayer.
Of sustaining and serving. Of living and loving.